The courtroom doors swing open. Cameras flash, whispers fill the air, and all eyes turn to one man. Kody Brown. The world knows him as the star of Sister Wives. But today, he isn't a celebrity. Today, he's a defendant. His family, his marriages, and even his children's future hang in the balance, as the judge prepares to decide whether the Browns are a family or criminals. The air in the courtroom was heavy. Reporters filled the benches, taking notes and speaking in hushed tones into recorders. TV cameras, kept at bay on the steps outside, still illuminated their bright light on the big double doors. And right in the middle of it all was a man the world believed they knew. Kody Brown. For years, audiences had watched him on TLC's Sister Wives, smiling, discussing love, family, and religion. Today, however, he was not looking anything like the confident polygamist who had introduced America to his 4 wives. His jaw clenched, his shoulders stiff. Behind him, his wives sat in silence, hands folded on their laps, eyes cast down. They weren't entering a home where laughter reigned, or a confessional interview seat with producers. They were entering a courtroom. And here, rules were unyielding. It had all begun months before. Utah officials had been monitoring the Browns for years. On television, they publicly exhibited a lifestyle that Utah law defined as illegal plural marriage. While most families lived quietly behind closed doors, the Browns had exposed everything: weddings, children, even intimate moments of family turmoil. Initially, certain officials downplayed the show as entertainment. But as ratings climbed, so did pressure. Phone calls poured into the state attorney's office. Why is this family permitted to get away with breaking the law on national television? The outcome was certain. There was a formal complaint. And now, with headlines shouting "Reality TV polygamist goes on trial," the Browns had to stand up for not only their program but for their whole lifestyle. As the gavel fell, the courtroom fell silent. The prosecutor, a grim-faced man in a dark gray suit, was standing tall and facing the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he started, "this is not a religious case. This is not a case about TV. This is a case about the law. And the law of this state is unambiguous. Polygamy is prohibited. And yet here we have a man, Kody Brown, who publicly, openly, repeatedly broke that law. He did not conceal it. He did not apologize. He broadcast it to millions. And by doing so, he stuck his nose in the face of the justice system we all abide by." The words resounded in the courtroom. Some of the jurors shifted in their seats uncomfortably. Others gazed at Kody with expressions unreadable. The prosecutor's tone became pointed. "This man has 4 wives. He refers to it as love. The law refers to it as a crime. And today you will determine if celebrity makes an individual above the law, or if the law is equally applied to everyone." The remark ended, but the silence that was created after was heavy with intensity. The Browns fans in the gallery held their hands clasped tighter. Critics smirked, savoring the triumph almost. Kody sat still, but in his heart, his chest thudded. He knew what was at stake. His chest thudded. He knew what was at stake. If convicted, he could spend years behind bars. Worse, his wives could lose their rights. His children could be ridiculed, and the family could be destroyed. Beside him, Christine's eyes glistened. Mary squeezed her hands together so tightly her knuckles whitened. Janelle sat stiff, her face unreadable, but her heart racing. And Robin, the youngest, kept glancing toward the children seated in the back rows, as if to reassure them silently, "We'll be okay." But would they? The Browns always knew they were different. They had constructed their lives around faith, believing in the sacredness of plural marriage. But now, what was holy to them? A court deemed criminal. Courtrooms have a tendency to amplify tension. Each cough, each rustle of papers, each creak of a chair sounded amplified. The judge, an old man with silver hair, observed intently. His face wore no emotion, but his eyes bore a weight. The weight of knowing that anything that went on here would set a precedent. The jurors leaned in, some writing furiously, others just gazing. For them, this was not another trial. This was an opportunity to determine if love was subject to the law. The gallery was polarized. On one side were supporters, members of religious groups who practiced plural marriage, families who mouthed prayers under their breath. On the other side were critics, activists who cried for justice, who viewed the Browns as condescending lawbreakers. The juxtaposition of silent disapproval filled the air as forcefully as any uttered word. When the prosecutor sat down, the judge looked toward Kody. His lawyer leaned close, whispering instructions. For a moment, Kody turned his head and looked at the jury. He couldn't help but wonder what they saw. Did they see a criminal, a man taking advantage of women? Or did they see a father of 18 children, attempting to live the life his religion required? He wanted to tell them all about it. About the love, the laughter, the dinner tables, the birthday bedlam and family vacations. But none of that was important here. Here, it was black and white. Legal or illegal. For the first time, Kody felt helpless. Outside the courthouse, the world was waiting. News networks argued the trial nightly. Social media exploded in hashtags. #free, the Browns #one wife. Enough #polygamy. On trial, some supporters stood up for the family, arguing love was love. Others called for consequences. In the courtroom, the Browns were vulnerable. Their intimate life, already broadcast on television, was now picked apart under oath. Every choice, every relationship, every marriage vow was now evidence. The kids also felt the burden. Some were old enough to comprehend, sitting in the back, as their parents were judged. For them, this was not about laws or religion. This was about whether or not their family would remain intact. As the proceedings for the day came to a close, the judge declared recess. Slowly the Browns rose and moved toward their family. Reporters yelled out questions, but marshals restrained them. And then, in that instant, with all the whispers and glares and loads of judgment bearing down upon them, the Browns closed in together. Kody bowed his head, his voice gentle. No matter what, he told them, we hold strong. We are family, and they cannot take that from us. Fear faltered for a moment, and unity prevailed. The wives nodded in agreement. The children held on tighter, but the fear did not disappear. It hung about, heavy, until the battle in court the next day. And so session 1 was over. Not with answers, but questions. Would the Browns be punished as criminals, or defended as a family exercising their religion? The courtroom had hardly started to unwrap the layers of love, law, and loyalty. But one thing was certain. What was coming would put their marriages, if not their notion of family, to the test. The next morning, the courthouse steps were crowded. Reporters jammed microphones in front of the crowd, shouting questions that bounced off the stone walls. Do you regret appearing on television, Kody? Mary? Are you prepared to go to prison? Christine? What about your children? Do they deserve this? The Browns didn't respond. They walked as a single entity, heads lowered, hands clasped. It wasn't just about television cameras anymore. It was about staying alive. Inside, the anxiety thickened. The prosecution had made its biting remarks the day before, setting up Kody as a lawbreaker flaunting his offenses. But now it was defense time. The Browns' attorney, a statuesque woman with a firm voice, strode to the middle of the courtroom. She put on her glasses, gazed straight at the jury, and started, "Ladies and gentlemen, the state would have you think that this is a matter of crime. They would have you believe these individuals, sitting here before us today, are dangerous. But let us be clear. This is not a matter of crime. This is a matter of choice. This is a matter of freedom. And this is a matter of whether or not we punish a family for living differently." She paused for emphasis. The Browns are not hiding. They have never hidden. Their lives are open to the world. You've seen them on television. Yes, but more importantly, you've seen their values. Love, respect, parenting, and faith. These are not criminals. They are a family, one that simply doesn't fit into the narrow box society has written. The words of the lawyer rang out with conviction. Jurors leaned forward. Even the judge seemed to relax his stare. The first wife to testify was Christine. Her blonde hair had framed a nervous face, but her voice contained surprising fortitude. "I realize individuals do not comprehend us," she started. I realize they glance at me and ask themselves why I chose that path. But I chose it because I have faith in it. My religion instructs me. This is the correct way. My heart instructs me. This is correct. I am no victim. I am not brainwashed. I am a woman who has made a choice to live my life with my husband and my sister wives. She stopped, looking at her children, sitting in the back row. Her voice trembled a little. My kids are not damaged by this. They are loved, more loved than most of the kids I know. They have mothers who work together, fathers who appear, siblings who nurture. They don't pay attention to the fact that there are 4 moms. They notice that they are safe, happy, and wanted. A few jurors smiled weakly. Some shifted nervously, not knowing what to believe. But Christine's sincerity was undeniable. Then there was Mary, the first wife, the woman who had been with Kody since the start. She took a seat, her eyes brimming with tears. When I married Kody, I knew what I was getting. I knew our religion. And I knew our way. And yes, it's difficult. It's not easy to share. But it's my decision. Nobody pushed me. Nobody pushed any of us. She breathed deeply. What it hurts the most is being informed that I am a criminal. That I am disobeying the law for merely loving my family. I am not harming anybody. I am not cheating anyone. I am bringing up children. I am taking care of my sisters. And I am living my truth. If it makes me a criminal, then the law should change and not me. Her tone was measured but sliced like a knife. The gallery stirred. Even the prosecutor, who had been taking notes, looked up and gazed. Then there was Janelle, the practical one of fans, the voice of sense. On the stand, she did not disappoint. Is he always the rational one in the family? She started, pushing up her glasses. And according to reason, this law does not make sense. It says to us that if we lead a quiet life, behind closed doors, nobody notices. But if we are transparent, if we are truthful, then we're criminals. That's hypocrisy. She leaned in, her voice assertive. Consider this. There are individuals who cheat, who lie, who have extramarital affairs. They are not punished by the law. But because we are truthful, because we commit openly, we are punished. Can honesty be the crime in this case? The jurors jotted down notes furiously. The defense counsel smiled weakly. Janelle had struck a chord. Finally, it was Robin's turn. The youngest wife, she had joined the family later, sparking both love and tension. As she took the stand, tears welled in her eyes before she even spoke. I knew, when I became a part of this family, that it would be difficult. I knew the world would not comprehend. But I did it because I saw love. I saw a man who loved his wives. I saw women who respected one another. And I wanted that for me and my kids. She addressed the jury directly, her voice cracking. I am not here to persuade you to find our decisions acceptable. I am here to plead with you not to ruin my children's lives. They did not make this decision. They did not request cameras, or headlines or trials. They just want their family. If you take that away, you will damage them for life. Tears flowed down her face. Even some of those in the public gallery rubbed away tears. Since the trial's human toll had never been more evident. At last, the defense summoned Kody himself. He went to the witness stand, his face ashen but resolute. The courtroom was abuzz. Everyone wanted to hear what the man at the heart of everything would have to say. He put up his right hand, promised to tell the truth, and sat down. I know what you've heard. He started out, that I'm arrogant, that I'm reckless, that I don't care about the law. But that's not who I am. I am a father of 18 children. I am a husband who loves his wives. I am a man of faith. And everything that I've done because I believe it's right. He stood up, voice rising. I never wished to violate the law. I never wished to stand in that courtroom. But I am not willing to deny who I am. If the option is between living a lie or seeing the truth, I will see the truth every time. The courtroom was quiet. A few jurors nodded slowly. Others continued to appear uncertain. But there was no disputing the passion in his words. As the defense rested, the jury murmured between themselves. They had listened to a family, not criminals. They had witnessed tears, faith, and conviction. But the law was the law. Could emotion trump legality? The judge declared a recess. and the Browns stood as one. They looked weary, tired of having their souls laid bare before strangers. But they looked solid, too. For now. Outside, the world was abuzz. Social media went wild with videos of Robin in tears, with Christine's courage, with Janelle's reason. News outlets blared. Browns defend love and courtroom drama. But within the courthouse, one thing was true. The ultimate decision hadn't been decided, and the true test lay ahead. As the Browns exited the courtroom that day, Kody quietly told his wives, "No matter what they rule, we shared our story. They know who we are now." But the question remained, would the jury judge them as a family struggling for freedom, or as lawbreakers masquerading behind love? The answer would arrive soon enough. The courtroom was as full as it had ever been. The case had by now gone national. New York to Los Angeles news outlets sent reporters. Kody Brown's trial was no longer about one guy. It was about whether or not America would accept polygamy openly. The prosecution had laid out its reasoning. The defense had bared its heart. And then came the most difficult part. When emotions clashed with law. When words were drowned out by tears. And when the Browns' carefully constructed world started to crumble. The defense summoned Kody back to the witness stand for more interrogation. He was tired, his proud stance from days past sagging under the stress of court time. But as he held up his hand and promised to tell the truth, something flickered in his eyes. This was not the Kody Brown who grinned on TV, laughing during interviews, boasting about handling 4 wives. This was a man teetering on the brink of losing it all. "I cherish my family," he started, voice shaking. "I know you've heard me say it before, but I need you to truly hear me out. I'm not perfect. I have erred, but my wives and kids are my everything. If it is criminal to love them, then I suppose I'm guilty, but I will not apologize for loving them." He hesitated, breath swelling and falling as he struggled to maintain control. Then in a flash, his voice burst out, shattering the silence. "You can take my house. You can fine me. You can label me. But don't you dare say my family isn't real. Don't you dare say my children, that the love they've known all their lives is a crime." Gasps filled the courtroom. Some of the jurors recoiled, shocked. Others leaned forward, taken by the sheer power of his words. But the prosecutor was unmoved. He rose from his seat, notes in hand, and came back at him. "Mr. Brown, you acknowledge breaking the law, don't you?" Kody paused before responding. "I acknowledge I prioritized my family above your law." The prosecutor jumped on it. "So you consider yourself above the law?" "I consider love greater than punishment," Kody retorted. The testimony became combative. The judge raised his hand. "Mr. Brown, keep your temper in check." But too late. Kody pounded on the witness stand. "How do you keep a man in check when you threaten to take his kids? What father wouldn't fight?" The gallery gasped in whispers. The judge commanded silence. But the moment hung in the air. The prosecutor sneered. Because although Kody's passion inflamed hearts, his rage also accused him of being careless. And then came the surprise. No one had anticipated. The prosecution brought into debate the Browns' children. "Your Honor," the prosecutor addressed, "we feel the children are specifically affected by this lifestyle. We request permission to speak on the issue." The judge, after hesitation, concurred. Although the children wouldn't take the stand to testify, their lives became testimony. Pictures were projected on a screen. Birthdays with 4 moms. Christmas mornings with scores of presents. Family vacations in which 20 people crammed into vans. The prosecutor gestured to the images. "This may look like happiness. But look closer. These children live in confusion. Who is their real mother? Who is their father loyal to? What kind of message does this send about family?" The words cut like daggers. In the back row, the kids wiggled. Some started crying quietly. Robin wrapped her younger children in her arms. Christine clamped her lip tight, struggling to hold back tears. The defense protested that love, and not confusion, was conveyed in those photographs. But the harm was done. The jury had viewed the kids, not merely as smiling children, but as pawns in a war of culture. At that moment, something unexpected happened. One of Kody's older daughters, sitting in the gallery, stood up. "Stop talking about us like we're broken," she cried out, her voice echoing in the chamber. "We're not victims. We're loved. Gasps filled the room. The bailiff rushed forward, guiding her back into her seat. The judge ordered silence. But the moment lingered like a ghost. The jury had witnessed it. The gallery had sensed it. The kids weren't merely silent specters in the case anymore. They were living evidence, one way or another, of the price. The following hours unwound into sheer emotion. Christine cried freely as the prosecution referred to her children as confused by design. Mary hid behind her hands, not able to even glance at the jurors. Janelle grumbled curses, shaking her head at the words of the prosecutor. Robin held Kody's arm tightly, praying silently. At one time, Christine reached over to Mary and whispered, "They don't see us. They never will." It was the beginning, not only of their break, but of their fracture. At the same time, the gallery split like never before. Supporters wept, mouthing amen under their breath. Opponents nodded their heads and muttered, "This is why the law exists." Journalists wrote furiously. One leaned over to another and spoke in a low voice. "This is not a trial anymore. This is not a trial anymore. This is theater." But not for the Browns. It was real life. As the day wore on, the judge finally slammed his gavel. "Enough," he stated. "This court will not turn into a circus. Mr. Brown, your feelings are recorded, but they don't excuse contempt. Counsel, keep your witnesses and your arguments in check." His voice was hard but exhausted. The trial had grown heavier than he had anticipated even. It wasn't law anymore. It was humanity, religion, politics and family, all crashing into a single fragile space. That evening, as the Browns emerged from the courthouse, they were mobbed by reporters. The flash of cameras blinded them. Questions assaulted them. "Kody, are you losing control? Christine, do you regret testifying? Kids, are you embarrassed by your parents?" At last, Kody lost his temper. He faced the cameras, his face flushed, his voice clipped. "You call this justice? You call this freedom? You're tearing apart children to prove a point. Shame on you." The segment was broadcast that evening on all the news stations. A few people watched a desperate father fighting for his children. Others saw a man disintegrating under stress. The courtroom drama was no longer limited to four walls. It was bleeding into living rooms nationwide. By the close of Session 3, the Browns were on the verge of cracking. The trial had begun as a legal issue, but it was now an emotional war. Every sentence was a stab. Every look from the jury was judgment. Every headline was a betrayal. Christine sobbed herself to bed. Mary sat silently, gazing at the ceiling. Janelle tried to hold it together but whispered quietly, "I don't know how much more of this we can take." Robin clung to her kids, making vows she wasn't certain she could honor. And Kody, sitting in the darkness, thinking back on his testimony, wondering whether his passion had rescued them or condemned them. The courtroom lights dimmed, the doors locked for the night, but the echoes of the day lingered. Kody's outbursts, the children's tears, the wives' breaking voices. The Browns had poured their hearts out, but would it matter, or would the law crush their love under its heavy weight? The answer loomed ahead, in the judge's hands, and the world waited. The fourth week of the trial started with an eerie, choking silence. The whispers and tense giggles that had filled the courtroom on previous days were gone. Now every shift of the wooden benches, every rustling of paper, every cough rang out. Everyone was aware that the trial was at its breaking point. At its center, the judge sat, tired-eyed, his silver hair glinting under the severe lights of the room. For days he had heard words, and wept tears and conflicting truths duke it out with laws. Now the burden of it crushed him like a storm. He wasn't just ruling on one family's destiny, he was ruling whether love could happen beyond the parameters of the law. Judge Harold Whitmore had sat on the bench for over 25 years. He was firm but fair, a man who prized justice over politics. But this case was different from any he had ever heard. The state had viewed it as simple. The Browns had violated the law, plain and simple. But the defense had made it something else. A moral struggle. A call for liberty. A scream of a family pleading not to be separated. Whitmore was aware that whatever he chose to do, it would resound outside of this courtroom. His decision would establish the precedent for subsequent cases. He was, in some sense, making history. And history, he was aware, could be merciless. The prosecution stood up first, striding deliberately in front of the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," the prosecutor began, "we've heard a lot of emotion. We've seen tears. We've heard about love and faith. But at the end of the day, this case is not about feelings. It is about facts. And the facts are clear. Kody Brown has multiple wives. That is illegal in this state. Period." He held aloft a fat binder of papers. Marriage licenses, statements, public confessions on national TV, all of it verifies what we already know. The Browns are guilty. And if we let them off with this, if we say the law does not apply because their tale is tragic or compelling, then we establish a frightening precedent. What other laws do we get to ignore? Where do we set the line? The prosecutor spun to the jury. "You took an oath to enforce the law. Not to be influenced by TV. Not to be impressed by tears. The law is the law. Do your duty." His words settled over the room like a boulder. Then came the defense. The attorney for the Browns glided to the middle of the room, her voice firm but gentle. "Yes, the law is the law. But people make laws. And sometimes people get it wrong." She paused, her eyes fixed on the jurors. "Consider history. One time it was against the law for women to vote. One time it was against the law for individuals of different races to get married. One time it was against the law to love someone of the same sex. Were those laws ethical, or were they unfair?" She extended her arms towards the Browns. "This family doesn't want you to agree with them. They want you not to dismantle them. They want you to recognize them as human beings, not as felons. They want you to balance not the letter of the law, but the essence of justice." Her voice trembled with emotion. "If we punish them for loving, what do we tell their children? That honesty is evil? That belief is a sin? That love is acceptable only if it conforms to everyone else?" The courtroom was still. Even the prosecutor, arms folded, shifted uncomfortably for a moment. Judge Whitmore rocked back in his chair, fingers interlocked. He maintained a neutral expression, but his mind whirred inside. He recalled cases in his experience. A young man imprisoned for a nonviolent crime. A mother denied custody due to antiquated laws. He recalled the bitter regret when decisions, legally correct, had destroyed lives. Now here was a family. Unorthodox, certainly, but as real as anything. He looked at the children weeping in the gallery. The wives shaking with fear. The husband trembling with rage and terror. He looked at the binders of documents. The books of law on his desk. The law that was plain as day. Polygamy was against the law. Was compassion more important than the law? Should it be? The jury was dismissed to deliberate. But the judge knew the ultimate burden would fall on him. The Browns sat together, whispering. Christine clutched Mary's hand. Robin wiped tears from her youngest child's cheeks. Janelle stared at the floor, jaw clenched. "I don't trust them," Christine whispered. "They'll never understand us. We just have to pray." Robin replied softly. He leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "No matter what, we stick together. They won't crack us." But his words cracked with his terror. Hours ticked by. The jury deliberated in secret. Reporters crowded the courthouse lobby, arguing on live broadcasts. This trial could change everything, one analyst argued. If the Browns prevail, it paves the way for challenging polygamy laws nationwide. Then what if they lose? Another asked. Then the word is loud and clear. The law does not kowtow to reality stars. Within, the Browns waited. Peds. Wives prayed. Hikili walked back and forth, his face ashen, his hands shaking. Time crawled by. When the jury at last returned, they did not speak, their faces impassive. But rather than announcing a verdict, they handed the judge a note. Upon reading it, he sent them out for the evening. That evening, Judge Whitmore sat alone in his chambers. Many hours after the courthouse had closed, papers covered his desk. Statutes, previous cases, pleadings. He massaged his temples, shouldering the burden of a nation. He considered his own kids, adult now, but once tiny and vulnerable like the Browns' youngest. He pictured them, being informed that their family wasn't real. The idea wriggled in his stomach. But then he considered his oath. To enforce the law, not reinvent it. If he stretched the law here, what kind of precedent would he create? It was a clash of head versus heart, and he knew that whatever way he decided, he would be blamed, perhaps even loathed. The next day, the Browns returned to the courthouse. Heeds. However, one was aware the verdict was imminent. The judge appeared, robes billowing, face stern. He scanned the courtroom, at the Browns, at the jury, at the reporters packed into every nook. This was a tough case. He started slowly. One that pushed the limits of law and compassion. The room went ice cold. Each pulse seemed to reverberate. Judge Whitmore's voice was even, but weighed down. The Browns are not criminals in the way that this court is accustomed to seeing. They are not violent. They are not dangerous. They are not harmful to society. They are, by all accounts, a family, a large, non-traditional family, but a family nonetheless. The Browns held their breath. Even so, the judge went on. The law is unequivocal. Polygamy is illegal. This court cannot abolish that law, however compelling the situation. The room erupted in a collective gasp. Christine welled up with tears. Robin hid her face in her hands. Mary clutched the bench in front of her. The judge sighed, his tone getting softer. So while I cannot sentence this family to prison without ruining innocent lives, I also cannot let them continue openly defying the law. The Browns are hereby enjoined to stop cohabitation as a plural marriage in this state. If they want to continue their lifestyle, they can do so somewhere else. The courtroom exploded. Reporters yelling, supporters weeping, critics cheering. The Browns sat in stunned silence. They weren't going to prison, but they were losing their home, their community, their roots. Kody's jaw tightened. He whispered, "So we're exiled." Christine sobbed quietly. Janelle stared straight ahead, her face pale. Mary looked broken, her eyes distant. Robin clutched her children, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay," though her voice betrayed her despair. The judge slammed his gavel. Order, order. But order no longer existed. The Browns' lives were forever altered. As the Browns exited the courthouse, cameras popped furiously. Questions came in a deluge. Where will you go now? Do you regret your decisions? Is this the end of Sister Wives? But the family did not reply. They strolled hand in hand, heads held high, the picture of unity even in loss. But within, they were broken. The judge had uttered words. The law had uttered words. And, while they had retained their liberty, they had forfeited their base. It was both a triumph and a penalty. A verdict that had left everyone questioning, was justice actually served? The gavel had fallen. The court had cleared. But for the Browns, the reverberation of that ultimate verdict didn't disappear. It lingered in their hearts, in their words, and in their days ahead. The world witnessed headlines. The family endured heartbreak. They were not criminals, but they were not free, either. They had been reminded, in the most public manner possible, that their love was not welcome in the state they considered home. And as they stepped out into the blinding storm of camera lights outside the courthouse, they knew their lives would never be the same. The ride out of the courthouse was soundlessly silent. Nobody was brave enough to speak. The children were bewildered and scared, searching their parents' faces for explanation, only to find the parents themselves lost in queries. It was only Christine who finally spoke. Her tone was biting, with rage and desperation in it. "So that's it? We just up and go, like criminals, like we don't even belong anywhere." Kody held the wheel hard, his knuckles white. "We're not criminals. We're still a family. They can't steal that from us." "But they can." Christine spat. "They just did. We can't live the way we want to. Not here. Not now. Maybe not ever." Robin attempted to calm her. "At least we're together. That's what counts. The kids, we must be strong for them." But even her words vibrated with uncertainty. Mary gazed out the window, quietly lost in thought. Janelle crossed her arms tightly, her face a study of frustration. No one felt like a winner. When they arrived home, the internet had erupted. News sites featured sensationalized headlines. Polygamous Brown family told to vacate state. Judge spares sister wives from jail, but at what cost? Is this the end of polygamy on television? Fans inundated social media with sympathy, deeming the ruling unfair and anachronistic. Opponents, however, rejoiced, calling it a long overdue triumph for the law. The Browns had no time to celebrate or protest. They were too busy staring at the bitter reality of pulling up stakes. Again. As the weeks passed, tension spread like cracks in glass. Every conversation seemed to circle back to the trial. The judge, the move, the future. Christine, fiery and outspoken, struggled the most. "We've sacrificed everything for this family," she told the others during one late-night discussion. "And for what? To be told we're not even real. That our children don't have a valid family." Kody bristled. "We're real. We don't need a judge to tell us that." "Then why do I feel like we lost?" she snapped back. Mary, typically reserved, finally spoke. "Because we did. We may not be in jail, but we're being pushed out. We're losing our home, our stability. That's a loss." Janelle, always practical, sighed. "So what do we do? Fight again? Or finally admit this isn't working?" Her words struck like a sledgehammer. The room fell silent. The most difficult came not from the cameras, the critics, or even the lawyers, but the children. One evening, Robin's son asked quietly, "Mom, are we bad people? Is that why the judge doesn't want us here?" Her heart broke. She hugged him tight, tears rolling down her face. "No, sweetheart. We are not bad people. We just exist differently. And sometimes people don't get different." But deep within, even she had trouble trusting her own words. The older children, teenagers who had endured stares and whispers for years, grew more restless. Some wanted to leave. Some wanted to stay and fight. All of them felt the weight of being the polygamous kids, a label that no verdict could erase. Producers from TLC called daily, pressing for statements, reactions, exclusives. "This could be your biggest season yet," one executive told Kody. But fame tasted empty. The cameras recorded their tears, their fights, their awkward smiles. But behind the scenes, the scars ran deeper than any episode could reveal. Christine found herself questioning everything, not only the law, but her marriage as well. If love is supposed to conquer all, why does ours feel so fragile? She confided to a close friend. Mary, already distant, withdrew even further. Janelle poured herself into work, avoiding emotional conversations. Robin clung desperately to the idea that unity could save them, but even she could see the family unraveling thread by thread. Weeks turned into months. Finally, the family gathered for one last meeting in their home. Suitcases were stacked in the hallway. Boxes lined the living room. Kody was standing before them, his voice thick. "We've had to make a decision, and I don't like it. But if we're here, we risk it all. Fines, arrest, losing the kids. So we're going." Again. Christine shook her head, sobbing. "How many times do we have to begin again? How many times we have to flee? When does it ever stop?" Robin took her hand. "It ends when people quit judging us. Until then, we do what we've always done. We stand together." But the word together seemed brittle, as if glass about to shatter. The relocation was the last straw for some. Older kids stayed behind with friends or family, not wanting to move again. The cohesion Kody insisted on was slipping from his grasp. Christine started to question aloud whether she could stay in the marriage. Mary pulled back nearly entirely, her relationship with Kody chillier than ever before. Janelle worked on the survival logistics, hardly even entering into emotional arguments. Robin attempted to keep everyone together, but even she was beginning to crack. The verdict hadn't merely driven them out of a state, it had driven them to confront reality. Their family was no longer the solid unit it seemed. In moments of stillness, each of the wives looked back on what the trial had been. Mary questioned if it was a sign to walk her own path at last. Janelle viewed it as evidence that practicality had ever been her strongest defense. Christine sensed that it was the universe urging her to escape a life that no longer suited her. Robin held on dearly to the hope that love might still overcome the fissures. And Kody, he blamed the system, the judge, the world. But secretly he suspected the real foe wasn't out there. It was within the family itself. The trial that started off as a legal contest ended up being something far more intimate. It laid the Browns bare to the world. Yes, but laid them bare to themselves as well. The gavel had dropped, but its reverberations still helped to mold every argument, every verdict, every heartache. It was the moment when their existence as one strength in union started to fray. The Browns' tale in that courtroom had nothing to do with law or religion. It was a story of identity, liberty, and the fragile threads of family. They entered court confident that they could show their love was indomitable. They emerged free, but broken. And for millions around the globe who watched, the question still lingers. Was justice done, or was a family torn apart in the name of the law?